Broadcasting from Detroit's Cass Corridor, it's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the show, Detroit wears its stories like badges, some bruised, some burnished. Today, one of those stories hits a milestone.
The Red Wings turn 100, a century of speed, swagger, bruising rivalries, and improbable comebacks.
The franchise has mirrored this city's spirit. Scrappy in the lean years, electric in the bright ones. A new exhibit dives into that legacy and will walk through its memories, myths, and the moments that made Hockeytown.
But Detroit's past isn't the only thing shaping its future. Our health system is shifting too, with major insurers leaving the state and families scrambling for coverage. Hospitals say the ripple effects could be severe.
We'll look at how this shakeup lands on patients and providers. And then there's the most urgent story of all. Too many babies in Detroit are born too soon. Too many mothers, especially Black mothers, say they are dismissed when they need help the most.
And this is where we begin, with the city's growing crisis of premature births. Birth is a very fragile experience. That's why with new life coming into the world, it's the responsibility of a lot of people, doctors and nurses and caregivers and family members, to ensure that such life is properly cared for. But to do that well, we have to care for pregnant women. In this state, we're being told that we're not doing a great job of that task, specifically for Black mothers. A new report shows that about 1 in 6 babies born in Detroit were born prematurely. And this issue is directly related to that of infant mortality and maternal health. 2 years ago in our country, over 20,000 babies died before their first birthday, the highest rates occurring in the South and here in the Midwest. Why is maternal health care, particularly for Black mothers, bad in the U.S. and worse here in the Midwest? And what can we do about it? To discuss this now, we have Tamika Jackson with us. She's a reproductive justice and maternal health organizer for Mothering Justice. Tamika, welcome to the Metro.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to first start with your work. You're a maternal health organizer. What does your organizing look like?
So my work centers Black moms and birthing people in Michigan, listening to lived experiences and organizing for policies that protect our right to survive pregnancy, postpartum, and motherhood. And unfortunately, that's what we're doing. We're surviving it. Our goal through our work is so that we can thrive in motherhood, thrive in birthing.
Because the experience of being pregnant, of having a baby, a lot of us think of that as being something joyful. And what I'm hearing from you is that this is a moment of great concern, of great friction and intensity and uncertainty.
Yes. And, it's not that, birthing is the only healthcare bubble where we see disparities existing. I mean, this is something to actually highlight the larger crisis in our healthcare system and how patients are treated. And just to see that it's so bad in the process of birthing is just unimaginable.
And you mean the crisis of racism in our healthcare system and people who are being dismissed, and no one is being dismissed at a higher rate than Black women.
Correct. But it's larger than just saying racism as an ism. It's more of it as an institution, right? These aren't things that are just happening just because someone has an unconscious bias, which is correct. But it's deeper than that. It's the training. It goes all the way back to them getting education to even come into the healthcare system. A lot of times, the way that the curriculum is structured is already, there's already a racial gap there, and even what they're learning about our bodies. And then there's also an economic factor too. We live in a very classless society. If you're more predispositioned to be at a poor end of the spectrum, you're going to get treated differently. You're not going to be treated with the same respect. You're not going to be listened to. And that goes even beyond race. And unfortunately, a lot of times, because of the racial structure of this country, Black people do experience that at a higher rate. And so that trickles into other aspects of our lives, from housing to criminality to even basic health care, which is sad. You know, you're trying to go into the hospital and have a baby. You're doing everything that you need to do. Even if you go in there healthy, you cannot have any underlying conditions, and there's still a risk when you go into a hospital to have a baby when you're Black. Doesn't matter. You could be rich. We saw that with Serena Williams.
Mm-hmm.
You could be internationally known, internationally loved. It doesn't matter. So when you go into that room, you're a Black person. And that's always going to be the determining factor in how you're going to be treated in that space.
What you're talking about right now, Tamika, I think is something really important for us to highlight. And that is, again, as you have noted, that this is systemic. And what this means then is that for Black women interacting with the system, this is sending them messages. It's sending them messages about what kind of healthcare they're going to get when they do interact with the system and what that's going to look like for them. And I'm suspecting that that discourages folks from getting the care that they need. Which
is actually what leads to a lot of people having underlying conditions that do contribute to negative outcomes, because it's hard to want to go into the doctor and get checked up on. It's because you get this indifference. You get certain types of questions when you come into the clinical setting. Even if you're just going to see your primary caregiver, there are specific types of questions that you'll get asked, and they almost treat you like you're seeking drugs, even if you're not. You could just be seeking clarity on what may be wrong with you, and you get a lot of dismissal of your concerns.
What kinds of questions, if you could give us some examples?
Ooh, let's see. So you might get questions about, like, do you have a history with drugs? Even though you don't have a history, they can see you've been going to the doctor for many years. It's just a line of questioning that you kind of get. And then when you're a parent, it's even scary to answer those questions, because medical kidnapping is a thing. Even in postpartum, when you are feeling a little depressed, you're almost afraid to even say, when they give you those questionnaires, like they put the questionnaires in place, right, so that we could possibly assess. But a lot of times when they put tools like that in place, it's more use against the patient than for the patient. You can be afraid to answer certain questions because they're very strategic with how they ask them. And it's like when you're used to being in a system that criminalizes you even as a child. I know what it's like to be criminalized as a child. You're already programmed in that way to be in a place of defense, going into any systemically structural racial system in this country. And, the hospital system has been one that has been very dangerous for us to be in. It's almost not safe to even seek help at times, especially for health conditions, because it's more of it's very helpful.
Yeah.
For me, it was even with making my birthing plan, it wasn't really like, it was more like they just gave me information and not really like helped me build what I should know. Like, I came to you as an expert, but it's more like they're waiting for me to just come to them and ask certain questions. And if I don't have the questions or don't know the questions, they're not going to help me find the questions that I should be asking.
And for you as someone who is immersed in this sphere, someone who's highly resourced, who knows her stuff, for you to feel that way, talking with healthcare providers gives us a window into how moms who know less, who are not doing this work every day, are feeling. This has me wondering, how connected then is everything that you're talking about right now with babies being born prematurely? Can you draw that connection for us?
Well, I mean, babies rely on the mother, right? Like, until a child is born, everything that the mother is experiencing, the baby is experiencing. They're relying on you for security, for food, for comfort, for all the things while you're inside the womb. Essentially, you have to be healthy to have a healthy baby. And unfortunately, when the mom isn't experiencing housing stability, doesn't have access to nutrition, good nutritious foods, transportation to get to her appointments, or experiencing unnecessary stress. And at times, even just going to the doctor can be very stressful.
Oh, yeah.
Especially now, if you're birthing through a large hospital system. I mean, you're in those revolving appointments where it's like you pick your 15-minute block, you wait all that time, you sit there, They come in, ask a couple questions, and ask you, do you have any questions? And it's like, I don't know, should I? Like, this is my first time. You're the expert.
And we're almost out of time here, and I feel like a number, and this is impersonal. And
like you're on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And you're just being rotated in and out. And so it's definitely not, it doesn't feel much like care. It just feels like a transaction. It's become very transactional. And even a lot of healthcare professionals I've spoken to, they're very much at the mercy of insurance companies as well. They decide like how and when people can be treated at times. They're not even medical professionals.
So at multiple points in the healthcare system, you're running into barriers that are making accessing good quality care really difficult. What are the consequences for newborns when we talk about the complications of having a baby prematurely?
Ooh,
a lot.
Well, there are some large complications. We could go into cognitive effects, physical effects. Some babies are born prematurely and don't have all their organs properly formed, which means more time in the hospital, which means more time for mom and dad to have to figure out how they're going to be in the hospital, more time off required, less time for bonding with your parents. That also impacts lactation. A lot of times, and even to continuously produce milk, you have to have that contact with your baby. The longer your baby's in the hospital, the less likely you are to be able to breastfeed. Even if you are, you're losing extremely important time that you need to have for that bonding process. And that's really what helps a baby survive. I mean, unfortunately, what isn't highlighted a lot when we talk about infant and maternal mortality is the time period and when it happens the most, which is in postpartum. And I mean, even if you have a baby prematurely, you're still in postpartum. You know, it's still after birth. And unfortunately, that's when infants die at a higher rate, and that's when the moms die at the highest rate.
So we're talking about perhaps the most pivotal moment for a mom and a baby. Earlier this month, the issue of Black pregnant women's pain and needs being ignored became a viral video. Kiara Jones went to the Dallas Regional Medical Center in Texas and was asked administrative questions while she was clearly in labor. So that means instead of rushing her to a bed, they had her checking in. Here's her mother discussing the incident. They experienced issues with hospital staff immediately when they arrived at the hospital.
Pulled up to the emergency room. We saw 2 nurses. Under assumption they are waiting on us. I get out the car, open the door for her, go up to the door. When she realized my vehicle wasn't an ambulance, she told me that space was for an ambulance only. So we could hear my daughter in the car, and I said my daughter's in active labor. Her labor is now 2 minutes apart. Her contractions, her water bag already broke, and she continued to direct me to the front of the hospital. She then walked away from me and went back into the building.
So this seems like a strong example of medical professionals not taking Black women seriously. But it is also seemingly indicative of a bigger trend that we've been talking about. How often do you hear stories like this one happening to people here in Michigan?
I mean, I can speak to my own personal experience. When I saw this video, I won't lie, I cried because it mirrored what it was like that dismissiveness, that not care. And for me, you know, I'm in the middle of getting an epidural, and I'm dying because of a mistake that she made, but she's not trying to listen to me. She literally, it was the exact same way. When I watched that video of that young lady and I saw that nurse sitting there and how she looked, it was like a flashback for me, because that's exactly what it was like. That body language, that dismissiveness, like that's exactly what it was like. And I felt so bad for her in that moment, because no one should ever have to experience that. When you are afraid, when you don't know if anything could be wrong, and especially when you have a baby inside of you, you are concerned not just for yourself, and you're vulnerable, and you feel like you're failing your child, failing to protect your child from someone that you think is supposed to be there to help them. It was a really, really sad thing to see. But I'm hoping that maybe it's an opportunity for us to stop pretending like it's not happening, to stop pretending like these are isolated incidents. These are different states in different parts of our country, our large country that we live in. This isn't an isolated situation. This woman, I've never met that one. I've never met that they were exactly the same. That nurse mirrored exactly the same as that woman that was in the room with me. States and states apart, years apart. It's 2025. And just the confidence that she had to do that speaks volumes. The fact that her comfort and her dismissiveness to a pregnant person. Like, you don't even care if this baby is harmed and you still feel like, well, who's going to really care? Like, that's how it came off. That's how it feels. And when you feel that way, when you feel unsafe in a place that you're supposed to feel safe in, it doesn't motivate you to want to go there for help. You don't see the healthcare system as a place for protection or help or care.
You shrink because this isn't the place for healing. This is the place to get smaller. My guest is Tamika Jackson, reproductive justice and maternal health organizer with Mothering Justice. We're discussing a new report showing that Detroit residents experience a disproportionate number of premature births, and that's particularly true for Black infants. Now, I want to move, if we could, to some solutions because, Tamika, you've done a really powerful job of laying out this problem, how deeply ingrained it is, how systemic it is. But people like you are working towards solutions. There's a lot more focus and attention on this issue of Black maternal health, of infant mortality and premature births, now perhaps more than ever. Are you seeing any changes happening in the medical system that are reflecting this rising consciousness?
A lot of community organizations, political advocates have been fighting for many, many years. We've been highlighting maternal mortality and infant mortality in Michigan over the past decade. And I want to say a more amplified tone. I see a lot more legislation popping up in Michigan to create supportive services and to also expand what birth work is and the access to the resources that we need to improve birth outcomes. And for Detroit, it's not broken. The systems are, for sure. And it goes beyond the city. But when you stack that with housing insecurity, we just went through a major housing crisis. Medical racism, utility shutoffs are a big thing. Underfunded neighborhoods and lack of real reproductive care. As you can see, they're closing more clinics than they're opening.
Yeah.
Our bodies respond to that. Like, stress becomes science and babies come early because of that. So some of the solutions that we really need in Michigan are like stable housing plus utilities. We see some current legislation around that. We need Medicaid coverage that includes doulas, midwives, lactation, and mental health.
Could you talk about, I mean, you just listed off some really important potential solutions. I want to think more deeply about doulas and midwives and the really crucial role that they can play. Talk about that.
So doulas and midwives, they're designed, their sole purpose is birthing, right? Most of our obstetrics came from midwifery. Midwifery is what taught them how to birth. But the thing about midwifery is that it's more in tune with listening to, the whole purpose and sole teaching of it is about listening to the birthing person, about them listening to themselves and listening to their bodies. And doulas really help you kind of hone in on focusing on what you need, what your baby needs, really getting back to holistic care, because we were birthing long before there were hospitals, right? Yeah. For many generations. And we really need to get back to that. Right now it's become just medicine.
It feels sanitized.
It's rushed. Half of us are induced. Let's look at how many people are induced that end up with some type of morbidity or mortality. Let's talk about hypertension and how the diagnosis has them giving you, what is that called? When they diagnose you with preeclampsia and then they give you Pitocin. and how good or bad that is for you and your baby, like rushing birth and then pushing for C-sections more often than natural birth.
So what doulas and midwives are doing as well, they're not only honoring the process, but they're also oftentimes fierce advocates for the people that they're working with. And it sounds like that's more important than ever, is to have that person who's going to go to bat for you confronting this medical system of giants.
And that's like one of the biggest takeaways that we have gotten from moms who have had the ability to have a doula or birth with a midwife, is that when they do end up in the clinical setting with the doctors and the nurses, that advocate being there has made a big difference for them.
Yeah.
I've talked to a few different moms who are like, I'm so lucky. They don't even know what it was like to not have that advocate, but because they had the advocate they could speak to, she was able to step in. I'm in an immense amount of pain. They will be asking you all types of intrinsic questions, and it's just like,
I can't think about that.
To my doula, she's been with me. She knows everything about my pregnancy, because in these larger hospital systems, you might be in a group of 4 different doctors who barely know you, have barely seen you, who don't really know much about beyond the chart. Your midwife and your doula, they're going to know you. They're going to know how often you've been eating, what you've been eating. They're going to know if you've been having pain or if you've been stretching, and they're going to know all the things that matter so that you can have a healthy birth, so they can tell the doctors, like, no, she doesn't need a C-section. She just needs time. She needs to walk around. She needs to be able to birth from this direction, because they always want you to birth on your back. We're not even supposed to be birthing on our back. If a woman wants to be able to stand and crouch or be to the side, like, there's just so many different techniques for birthing that the clinical setting is just not open to anymore. It has become very sterile, very one way of doing things, and that's not how birthing works. And so a lot of times they need to be re-educated on what birthing is.
And then there is the policy aspect of this as well. And in January, state legislators from Metro Detroit reintroduced a package of bills, the Momnibus bills, to address inequities in maternal and infant care. And that included programs that expand Medicaid to midwives and create a system to report discriminatory experiences in medical settings. What do you think is the likelihood of these bills passing?
Oh, I think it's very, very strong.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. When it was introduced last year, it passed through Senate completely. It passed through House committee. It was literally just the lagging of the House and lame duck. We had plenty of bipartisan support. So I don't see why we won't see it passing in this next year, in this next election time. Even though the legislative session is about to come to an end, we still have all of 2026. And I think, 2026 is going to be a big year for a lot of changes for us in Michigan. So,
how much do you think that these bills would do to help all pregnant women in the state?
I think it would definitely be a shift to move us in the right direction. We can't say that anything is going to be the end-all, be-all. We're up against a systemic system that was set up a couple hundred years ago that has been sustained by a lot of other things. But I think putting these things in place and put an accountability system in place is only the beginning. I think the only way that we can go from here is in a more positive direction. And I'm hoping that through us sharing our stories and our experiences, that people understand the need for this and how important it is and how they will be held accountable if it doesn't change, because you can't say that you don't know that it's happening anymore. You can't pretend.
Tamika Jackson, reproductive justice and maternal health organizer with Mothering Justice. Tamika, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's the Metro on WDET. Last year, the victims of text and email scams are very often senior citizens. This year in Michigan, many are taking the form of text messages claiming fake toll road fines. Up next, how to spot and avoid the scams. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay with us.